Here. So good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Joanne Creevy, and I'll be your host for today's session, the first in our series Building the Tech Foundation for Sustainable Business Success. Today's topic is finance and tech alignment, making data work for better decisions. And we'll be exploring how integrating finance and technology can give businesses real-time insights, enabling faster and smarter decision making. For SMEs, the right systems can accelerate growth while the wrong ones can quietly hold you back. We're joined by two fantastic experts from Kinore. So, Rick, our Chief Technology Officer and Head of Digital Transformation. Hi, Rick.
Hey,
Rick leads our strategy around automation, scalability, and AI driven innovation. Tom, Head of our Accounting and Small Business. Hi, Tom.
Hello, everyone.
Tom is FCCA and CTA, who supports SMEs with accounting, compliance, and taxation so that they can focus on growth. Kinore is an award-winning, tech-driven accountancy and company secretarial firm supporting SMEs and startups across Ireland and the UK. We combine chartered expertise with smart automation to deliver clear, reliable finance support so you can focus on growing your business. So just a quick note, today's content is general guidance. So for business specific advice, it's always best to speak with your accountant. We're happy to help if you need support. We'd love your participation throughout, so feel free to use the chat or Q&A to submit any questions for Rick and Tom. Over to you.
Thanks, Joanne, for the lovely introduction. And I don't know about Rick, but certainly I'm starting to feel very important. So thank you for that. Um, this webinar is probably an unusual kind of one where we bring the finance and tech together. Certainly for me anyway. But good because I suppose in the day to day now, it's just happening all the time, which is why we thought, look, it would be good to put that on the map. We have about 30 minutes for the webinar. It's not a lot of time, but what I would say is we keep the content high level. We focus on the big picture. As always, I think with any of these webinars we do, the value probably isn't the questions that get asked. So I would certainly encourage plenty of questions along the way. We can, like Joanne, we could probably keep it interactive and have little pauses along the way if there are questions, because no doubt they'll be topical to what we're talking about. So there's no problem there at all. From my side, I'm sure Rick, you're probably the same as well.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so what we'll aim to cover anyway, disconnected systems that can slow decision making. That's the first of three items we'd like to cover. The second item is the manual processes that can drain the talent. And the third one then is, where sometimes poor tech decisions in, short-term decisions can create the long-term financial drag. And hopefully then by the end of the session, you'll see why business leaders don't necessarily need more tools. It's probably just, a clearer plan, a clearer, simpler plan. So with that in mind, we'll jump in. So Rick, we'll start probably with a pain point that I see a lot in my interactions with clients and prospect clients as well, actually. It's, whether it's a new business, an established one, it probably doesn't matter that much really. It's those disconnected systems because SMEs, they often run their finance, their sales, operations on separate platforms. Probably nothing intentional. It's just how things evolved. But those separate platforms don't necessarily talk to each other. And for every manual export you do, every copy paste, every spreadsheet, all those workarounds, they're creating the blind spots, probably delays. And probably the most scary one of all is that risk of human error when you're moving data from one system to another. Data can get lost or mistranslated across. And I suppose when things like that happen, then you have to question your reporting. Like, is it accurate? Does that leads into my forecasting? Is that reliable? And that feeds into probably operational problems around resources, allocations, delivery, etc., etc. And before I jump over to you, Rick, I just talked briefly about an example of a business we worked with recently. They were looking to raise some external investment. And as investors do, they asked business, they're going through the financials, they asked for their committed revenue, the contracted revenue. But the business was struggling, like they couldn't calculate it, they hadn't got it to hand. The finance system tracked invoices brilliantly, CRM tracked, the deals that are happening, but nothing was really talking to each other. That gap probably cost them time, but probably more so credibility, like, because they hadn't got that at the push of a button. Um, so, like, Rick, you probably see that a lot, like with businesses not necessarily having connected systems.
I built a career on it. So my background is in software architecture, and it just happens to be integrations and integration platforms and solutions. So
Mm.
yeah, super super common use case. And the good news is that we can solve your example here on the call today with a really quick demo, actually. But I'd say with where everybody should start. You know, I use this phrase, don't get lost in the sauce. The first thing you need to do is look, so if you've identified a business need, you need two systems to talk to each other. I'm oversimplifying for time here because point to point integrations have a place. But if you're looking to connect two systems, I think the first thing you need to do is to just write this down and get it on paper. Let me do a quick demo because I'm a visual person myself, and I can show this a lot better than I can explain it verbally, I should say. But what
Yeah,
I'm going to show everyone on the call here. So I am logged into an LLM. This just happens to be Grok. This particular model is really good with code, but you can use ChatGPT, Claude. The flavor doesn't matter. But
okay.
your exact example that you said. So I want to generate a data flow diagram connecting Zero to HubSpot. I think that was your example, right? So it's a financial system with a CRM
Yeah.
for the purpose of doing um, the contracted value, right?
Hmm.
Say in Mermaid. So Mermaid's just a very extensible um, framework for generating diagrams. People aren't really using Visio so much anymore because um, this can well because I don't know, it's just a lot better to it's more extensible to have this in code. But what
Yeah.
this has done for me here is it's showing me I'm gonna have to tweak this. I'm actually gonna go to one I actually ran this morning. This is a lot cleaner. I basically, you can see here I did the same generated data
Mm.
flow diagram to Zero, HubSpot, Mermaid. It's an LLM, so I don't want to sit here and go back and forth with it to get it to look a little nicer. But what I'm showing here is so we've got HubSpot. It's pointing out the entities that we need. So it knows that we need the companies, we need the invoices, and we need the deals out of HubSpot. In Zero, it's showing us, okay, we need to connect the contacts, the invoices, the payments, and the accounts. Now, this is suggesting a integration platform like Zapier, but you could also, like I said, do a point-to-point integration using like Azure Function or AWS Lambda. It doesn't necessarily, that doesn't matter. My point in showing you this, though, is like I said, this is half the battle. So what we've done here is documented like our business requirement. So we need to connect these two systems. Here's the entities that will be connected, and here's how they'll be connected. The good news is you can also, because this chart is actually generated with a code markup. You can take this, copy and paste this into an editor, and you don't need to even understand this underlying code markup, but you can make some changes directly to the diagram in an editor to extend it further if you need to. We could also go back to here, and let's just say, for the sake of again closing the loop on this demo, and say like we wanted to complete the integration today. we could have this tool generate the code to complete the integration, and get it like probably 70 to 80% of the way, so that we can then deploy that out as a solution pretty rapidly. So these
Okay.
solutions are like, especially if you're leveraging something like an LLM, like it's becoming easier for someone who doesn't have a whole lot of programming experience to put these integrations in place.
Right, can
Um,
I ask a
mm,
question? Sorry.
Yeah.
So like if you weren't sure about what the problem was with the tools that you have in place or what add-ons you would need, would you recommend first to map out processes within the business, or what would be a starting point before moving to like a diagram like this?
Yeah, this was just speaking to Tom's specific
Yeah,
example, which is really common,
yeah.
that contracted value and predictability
yeah,
around that. But you're right. What that's called taking a snapshot of your application landscape. So
yeah.
that's where
Yeah.
you would literally define all of the tools that you're using in your business.
Mm-hmm.
And again, just like I did here, you can generate some relatively um, um, useful diagrams to help you understand where the opportunities are to
Mm-hmm.
integrate and automate aspects of your business. You can absolutely leverage AI to do that these days.
Great.
And I'm just thinking, 'cause I'm like my background is in tech. It's finance. So I mean, I'm learning as we go here. And I like the way you say, that was a great question, Joanne, because you're mapping current
Mm-hmm.
state, and you could probably ask your Grok or your Chat GPT or whatever. This is my current state. Like, how could I do this better, or how could I integrate potentially, etc. You mentioned mermaid there as well, Rick. Like, what's the significance of mermaid? Because that's certainly a new one to me.
Mermaid's just a standard. So you know what that is? That's just a standard framework.
Yeah.
So Microsoft last week announced they're actually extending Notepad. So Notepad is going to it's capable of understanding Markdown. You can add tables to Notepad, but Mermaid
Yeah.
in particular, Microsoft has invested the ability to render Mermaid diagrams directly in things like SharePoint and in Loop if your business is using.
Okay.
So it's kind of replacing aspects of Visio.
Yeah.
Familiar with Visio?
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Okay. So that was the disconnected processes. So I thought that was the visual was actually very good because it kind of showed kind of how they could potentially join up. The next area we're going to look at is the manual process then, because what we find is that teams they often spend hours every week or every month on data entry, on reconciliations. And I'm just looking at this from an accounting side, like the basic data entry where they're putting in an invoice or they're putting in a transaction. And it's as a business of scale, like tasks that can multiply, but headcount doesn't. You might still only have a small finance team because the business maybe hasn't got the financial wherewithal to invest, or there could be other reasons. Maybe it's invested in other areas, and the finance isn't priority. So in doing that, then like the real cost isn't necessarily in the hours it takes to input that data. It's probably the hours of strategic work that never gets done because the team is stuck in that admin data entry mode. And one client we worked with recently enough had their finance team spending days, reconciling bank accounts and inputting invoices manually. And in seeing that, we introduced a tool to them that really, it automated that entry because you know invoice entry tools are really smart now, really clever. So it can scan the invoice, it can upload it, and then you approve it in the software. Um, but along with that, then it's like some softwares now have like Xero, for example, have the live bank feeds feeding into their accounting software, and that's really clever because your software always has reasonably up to date bank information. Um, and in
Tom,
doing, Yeah.
Sorry, can I just ask a question there when you mentioned zero in banks? We had a pre-submitted question just around that, if you don't mind just addressing that now.
Mm,
The question was, can we manage multiple bank accounts and credit cards using zero? Example, current account, second account for our
yeah.
GBP, savings accounts and credit card accounts. Sorry to interrupt there, but just thought it was a good time.
A good time, a good question.
Yeah.
Yes, is a short answer. Yeah, for the main banks, and even some of the online banks now, they link in and integrate. Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. So multiple banks, no problem. So with our client in doing that, like the data entry time just dropped dramatically. The team have to be open to a little bit of tech as well, of course. But they were and involved in simple tech. So they could see the value then in their time, being able to focus on kind of more strategic adding value time instead of paperwork. But um, but Rick, from your point of view, your side of the house, what would your thoughts be on eliminating any manual processes?
Well, excuse me. So to start, you're absolutely correct. So it's look for once you have your application landscape defined, I'd say take a look at that. And again, if you document that, that lets you look for opportunities for off-the-shelf products to automate things. Either like you said, like invoice uploading tools. There's five or six of them that I could rattle off. But another thing to look at is in terms of automation is what integrations do you need to reduce manual entry? Because Tom touched on it, but you really, especially dealing with numbers, you want to reduce the amount of human data entry that's going on as much as possible to alleviate any risk of someone making a mistake, right? So I'd say look at what opportunities you have to um, integrate things in terms of automation, and then like the last piece of that is also look at what you can cut. I've seen a lot of the trend lately with businesses has been to go out and buy a bunch of SaaS solutions, software as a service solutions, or turnkey cloud solutions. And what that's led to bloat in terms of you know you might have a quoting system, and then you have an invoicing system, you have a CRM, you have a practice management solution, you have an ERP. All of these are all different disconnected cloud systems. So look at where you can consolidate,
Mm,
because that's another important aspect of maybe the answer isn't to integrate do an integration, but it's to consolidate and say like, well, maybe my quote system can also handle, maybe that's built into my CRM. Maybe, combine systems where possible, where feasible, and then just do a data migration.
yeah, that's a good point. And something that that came came to mind actually when you were talking there was, yeah, like eliminate maybe, but if the process doesn't need to be done. But to your point, then like automation. So generally speaking, if there is a process, either can you automate it or can you eliminate it? I suppose that's the first port of call. And maybe you can't, but certainly it's a good opportunity to reflect on the processes that the business is following. A lot of I think tech is it's brilliant now on what can be automated. Some processes shouldn't be automated. That's for sure. But
That's exactly
certainly
what I was just going. That's exactly what I was just going to hit on. Tech is. Look at tech after you've reviewed and documented. Now that I've showed everybody Mermaid, I'm hoping everybody goes into ChatGPT and starts generating a bunch of process diagrams. Like, and because you can just describe what your process is in plain text, and it'll give you a
yeah
nice representation of that. But the point I'm trying to make here is look at the process itself and cut, like take a very lean approach and cut, be very aggressive and cut the actual pieces out before you look at tech to automate anything. Because what I've found with working with clients is more often than not, it's more of a people process issue, not
yeah.
a tech problem.
And somebody said to me not that long ago was, does that process, manual or otherwise, does it add value to your client, your customer, your client? And if it does, good. If it doesn't, that's probably where you're looking at, okay, do I need to automate it or eliminate it? Because like, as I said, you know, it shouldn't just be a slash hook approach, you know. So bear that in mind. So I think a lot of the time a softly approach is good. Like you know, small changes can, you know, over time can make big changes. Yeah. Okay.
Tom, can
Yeah.
I ask a question? And even to yourself, Rick, you know, we often see it from new clients. Sometimes there's someone on the team that's quite reluctant to get away from the manual processes, you know, like the highlighter and the ruler and whatnot. And how would you sort of approach it to get them on board, to put that automation into place and get that fear away from them, you know, that it actually can improve business processes and not that could be that fear of them, maybe that there's no need for them, maybe within the like accounts team, or you know, perhaps it could be that that's what they're thinking, but I suppose it's to kind of bring them along with the changes.
Can I take that one? Because I'm actually really
Yeah,
passionate about this.
yeah, sure.
What you're describing is good change management.
Yeah,
So you have to, like, whenever you're rolling out a new solution, whatever it is, it doesn't have to do with tech or any kind of process change throughout your organization. The best place to start is explaining to your resources, to your employees, why that's happening. What is
yeah,
our goal with making that change so that everybody's on the same page? And then you talk about, like, here's the timeline for the change, here's exactly the new procedure change. But what I've found is that everybody skips over the why. Why are we
Yeah.
making this change? It's so that you can focus on other things. 9 times out of 10, like, a piece of technology or a process change is not designed to make a position redundant. Like the overwhelming majority of the time, it
Mm.
to refocus time where it matters, and to use time more intelligently, and not to look for, improving margins in that area, I'd say.
yeah,
Yeah.
great.
I would probably second that. Um, and thankfully, my experience, most are open to the changes, but sometimes you have to explain like what's in it for me, you know, me the individual, you know, with the changes happening. Rick's point is absolutely valid. Like, you know, it doesn't necessarily make a position redundant that you have. Might for the business, it might mean you might need many future hires for sure, and for the individual, you know, sell the benefits of them working, you know, elevating themselves and
Yeah,
their own careers, etc. I think we've even ourselves, we found that, you know, if fairly easy sell because for the individuals, yeah, I mean most people want to elevate themselves where they can, you know, and it's a no-brainer. Um, and I think probably the approach of the softly as opposed to the radical changes, you kind of bring more people along with you through that change management process as well.
What is this softly? That's the first time I've ever. So Tom and I have worked together for a long time. This is the first time I've heard softly. What does that mean? I've never
Well,
heard that before.
I suppose day one, just don't throw out everything that's there. It kind of change over time. So you know,
Oh,
it could
okay.
be,
Boil the
it could be,
frog.
you know, okay, yeah. That's how you say, yeah. So like, let's say in the first quarter we make these changes, and then this, you know, so you're not
Uh,
just pressing light switch as it were. Yeah. So softly. There you go. Yeah. Okay. Great. So the next area then we'll cover then, which is the third area, is around the tech decisions. So the impact of, you know, potentially poor tech decisions at the start or at various different stages that probably we're solving a problem that was on our desk today, but not necessarily about next year's problem or a problem that's going to arise in, you know, in 3 or 5 years' time. The short term kind of cheap software can sometimes lead to the expensive fixes or rebuilds later, maybe migrations. So, Rick, no doubt, you know, I know you've seen it actually, and no doubt, you know, businesses here, you know, would have seen it as well, where money has to be spent later than rebuilding on that stack because decisions didn't necessarily consider this the scalability, and there was probably no malice intended. It just happens, doesn't it?
yeah, that's it. Well, so a lot of times it's snowballs. So, the right solution for today isn't necessarily going to help scale your business 3 to 5 years from now, right? So you really have to, and this is going to steal some thunder. I think the next webinar I think that I'm going to do with Kinore is going to walk through how to put together a a roadmap. So you've got your business goals over here, you've got your current state technology application landscape, or your current state stack. How do you bridge those two? How do you get to your goals? Whether your goals are improved margin, additional revenue, scale the business otherwise. But I think the major thing to kind of look at here is, and I've seen it sounds so easy on paper, but people get kind of paralyzed by decision making. And what I mean by that is, given a solution in your tech stack, whether that's an ERP, CRM, whatever financial system, you need to go through a very diligent vendor selection process. And what that entails at a very high level, because I'm looking at the time we have remaining, you need to define your business requirements, not just for current state, today, but look into the future. Like, what are my business requirements going to be in the future? And then you need to go through and research, research the options. I usually do 3 to 5. Research your options for each one and score those based on your business requirements. And then that's essentially like a technical vendor selection without like the integration plan, the data migration, all that stuff. But that is where people, I think, get lost, where they mess up. They don't know how to do that vendor selection. It's really not that complicated, but it's just, you do need to follow a methodology that you adhere to, and it's repeatable and it makes sense for your future goals.
Is there any tools out there for helping with the vendor selection, Rick? Like based on the known knowns I have, and maybe what I know about my business growth projections.
There are frameworks. I know some, if you look it up, some consulting, some of the big four consulting have offered like open source frameworks and methodologies for tackling that. But what I found is that they're overcomplicating what you need to do. It really is just start with what your business requirements are, what your needs are,
Yeah.
and look at what that product or that solution, if you're developing your own solution, what the capabilities are there, and then literally just score it independently, to come out with a viable solution.
They always say, like, when do I start? Because sometimes you don't start at the start. We worked with a business recently, like they were a well-established SME, around for many, many years. And they realized that they had to look properly at their tech stack. So I was just thinking, like, when you're saying that, then it's probably never too late to start. You have to start sometime. It might not be the optimum time, but start somewhere, plant that seed. Yeah.
Franklin Covey, begin with the end in mind. That's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah.
You have to start somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, thanks, Rick. So look, I'll hand back to Joanne now shortly, in the interest of time. But hopefully, in the section we've taken this morning, we've demonstrated like why leaders don't necessarily need some more tools. It's just that clear plan. So Joanne, I'll hand back to you just in case there's any questions or anything else you'd like to cover before we wrap up.
That's great. I'm just going to put on my screen, I know Rick touched on it, just to sort of promote our next series of Scaling Without Chaos, building a 12 to 30 month tech roadmap. So in this session, Rick will guide business leaders through how to build strategic technology roadmaps that support sustainable, cost-effective growth. So it's on the 20th of January and 10:30, and you can register on our events page on our website. So it'd be great if you're planning to grow in the next 1 to 3 years. This is definitely one to attend. And then just that brings us to an end today. So a huge thank you to Rick and Tom for sharing your insights and to all of you for joining and participating. We hope you leave with practical ideas on how to align finance and technology to make smarter, faster business decisions. If you have any follow-up questions or would like support for your business, send us over an email at hello@kinore.com or call us on the number shown on the screen. Our team is always happy to help. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank
Bye.
you all.
Thank
Bye.
Very
you.
much.